Yes, children, let us go further. The next classification is displacement reaction. You know, there are two types, single displacement and double displacement. First, we will see single displacement reaction. Okay. Now, what happens here? A more reactive metal displaces a less reactive metal from its salt solution. Say you take magnesium, treat it with copper sulfate solution. Magnesium is more reactive than copper, so it will displace copper from copper sulfate and it will take its place. Okay, magnesium copper की जगह पे आ गया, तो MgSO4 plus copper. Now copper sulfate is blue in color, this is colorless, and a reddish brown deposit of copper is found at the bottom. Same way, if you put a piece of zinc in copper sulfate solution, it will turn colorless. This blue color will turn colorless because zinc sulfate is colorless. Same way as that of MgSO4. And again you will find reddish brown deposit of copper that is formed at the bottom. Same way if you put a piece of iron into copper sulfate solution, again it will give you FeSO4 plus copper. Now this is pale green in color and you will find reddish brown deposit of copper that is found at the bottom. Or it may also be present on the नेल, जो आयरन नेल डाला ना, अगर पूरी तरीके से रिएक्ट नहीं हुआ तो इसी के ऊपर एक कॉपर की रेडिश ब्राउन डिपॉजिट उसके ऊपर ही प्रेजेंट होता है. So this tells you that these three metals are much more reactive than copper, so they will displace copper from its salt solution. Now, when magnesium is reacting with sulfuric acid, it liberates hydrogen gas. Now this is also a single displacement reaction. Now here Mg is taking the place of H plus ions. It becomes MgSO4. Okay. Mg is much more reactive than hydrogen. So it displaces hydrogen from sulfuric acid and it liberates hydrogen gas. Like that you can give many examples. Like aluminium, if you treat it with iron oxide, you will get aluminium oxide plus iron and energy is released in the process. Now here aluminium has displaced Fe from Fe2O3 to produce Al2O3 and Fe. Now this particular reaction is a very important reaction. How and why, if you ask? Now see here, especially where there are cracks in the railway tracks. Now all these railway tracks, they are made up of iron, you know it very well. So what they do, if there are cracks, then when the train moves, there may be some accident or there may be some disturbance happening during the movement of the train. So what they do is they go to that particular place and then they mix this aluminum powder along with iron 3 oxide, and in the presence of magnesium ribbon they heat. When this iron is formed in the molten state, now this molten iron is dropped in the cracks of the railway track. Okay, and on cooling what will happen, वो crack जो है वो जुड़ जाएगा, it will fill up. Okay, and this reaction is called as thermite reaction, and the mixture of aluminium powder and iron 3 oxide is called as thermite. It's called as thermite and the reaction is called as thermite reaction. Okay. Then this is how the welding is taking place. Welding of cracked metal parts is taking place like that. Now the next one is double displacement reaction, where what do you find here? There is exchange of ions between the substances combining. Now sodium sulfate and barium chloride are combining to give you barium sulfate and sodium chloride. Now what has happened? Sodium has gone here and barium has gone there. So BaSO4 and NaCl form हुआ, and BaSO4 comes out in the form of white precipitate. Okay. What is a precipitate? Anything that is insoluble in the medium is called as a precipitate. So if you are asked what is a double displacement reaction, you are supposed to write like this. These are reactions in which there is exchange of ions between the molecules which combine and an insoluble substance called precipitate is formed. This is how you are supposed to write the definition. So I have given you 3 examples. Silver nitrate plus sodium chloride will give you silver chloride, which comes out as curdy white precipitate. Then lead nitrate plus potassium iodide gives you lead iodide, that is obtained as a yellow precipitate, plus KNO3. So I have shown you all these things, different videos, and what is the coloration, how precipitates are formed, all these things you have already seen. You just have to recollect your memory. Now, apart from this, respiration is an exothermic reaction. How? Now, what happens during respiration? Respiration, generally what happens, the children, they get confused with respiration and breathing. Breathing is a different exercise. Respiration is a different thing. Okay. Now try to understand the difference. Breathing means it is inhale of oxygen and exhaling of carbon dioxide. That is breathing. Now what happens during respiration? During respiration, glucose, that is whatever you eat rice, wheat, okay. So उसमें जो glucose है, that glucose combines with oxygen in the cells. You have inhaled oxygen, is it not? So that oxygen will be there in the cells, and the glucose that you are eating will take up the oxygen from the cells, and it produces carbon dioxide, water and energy. So glucose, it combines with oxygen of the cells to form carbon dioxide and water, and in the process of combination it will release energy. So when energy is released, it is exothermic reaction, right? Now what happens here? The food, that is starch that we take, on chewing, when you chew it in your mouth, it breaks into glucose in the presence of saliva and the enzymes present in the saliva. Okay. Now this glucose is absorbed into the bloodstream where it comes in contact with oxygen. Bloodstream में जो oxygen है उसके साथ combine होके it will give you carbon dioxide and water. Okay. So it comes in contact with oxygen that we inhale to produce carbon dioxide, water and energy. Now since energy is released in the process, it is called as an exothermic reaction. Now a few examples of exothermic reaction I have given. Respiration is exothermic. Combustion of any fuel, LPG ho, kerosene ho, diesel ho, yes, or it may be wood, or it may be charcoal, whatever it is, any fuel, combustion of that is exothermic. Reaction of metal with acid is exothermic. Reaction of metal, more reactive metal with salt solution, that is also exothermic. Decomposition of vegetable matter is again exothermic. If you dissolve an acid into water, that is again exothermic. You have studied about how concentrated sulfuric acid is added to water, right? Which is added. It is acid that is added to water. कभी हमने water acid में नहीं डालना. हमेशा पानी रख के पानी में drop wise acid डालते जाना to produce dilute one. Then thermite reaction, just now we saw, that is also an exothermic reaction. Now when you come to endothermic reaction, photosynthesis is an endothermic reaction because sunlight is used there, right? Unless energy is produced, energy is used, the reaction will not take place. Then dissolving ammonium chloride in water, that is also endothermic. Now if you dissolve a pinch of ammonium chloride into water, the test tube becomes ice cold, itna chilled ho jata hai. That tells you that it is an endothermic reaction. Then water kept in earthen pot, is it not? Matke ka pani thanda hota hai, so that is again endothermic. Melting of ice, it takes up the energy from the surrounding and then it melts, is it not? So that is also endothermic. So these are all a few examples for endothermic and exothermic. Basically what happens? In an exothermic reaction, energy is released and it takes place on its own spontaneously. Whereas endothermic reaction is that where energy is absorbed and it takes place on providing energy. Unless you provide energy, the reaction will not happen. That is called as an endothermic reaction. There are very few reactions where the things will take place on its own, like water kept in an earthen pot. It will take place on its own. You need not have to provide energy because from the surrounding it will take up itself. Okay, the water will be coming out through the pores of the earthen pot, and the water that comes out on the surface will get evaporated due to the outside temperature, and that is how the water becomes cool inside the pot. Now the next one is redox reaction. Now what are redox reactions? A reaction in which oxidation and reduction take place simultaneously. This is called as a redox reaction. Now what is oxidation? Addition of oxygen is oxidation, or loss of hydrogen is also oxidation. Loss of electron is also oxidation, right? whereas reduction is addition of hydrogen, loss of oxygen, gain of electron. Is that clear? Just the opposite. See, addition of oxygen है तो ये addition of hydrogen है, loss of hydrogen है तो loss of oxygen है, loss of electron है तो gain of electron है. Okay, they are just the opposite of each other. Okay, now let us see a few redox reactions. Now see what happens. PbO plus C gives you Pb plus CO. Now here what has happened? PbO में से O हट गया, Pb बन गया. C में ऑक्सीजन ऐड हुआ तो CO बन गया. So C to CO is oxidation, PbO to Pb is reduction. Same way CuO plus hydrogen, CuO to Cu ऑक्सीजन रिमूव हो गया तो रिडक्शन. हाइड्रोजन में ऑक्सीजन ऐड हुआ तो ऑक्सीडेशन. जहां पे एडिशन ऑफ ऑक्सीजन है वो ऑक्सीडेशन है, जहां पे ऑक्सीजन रिमूवल है वो रिडक्शन है. सेम वे हियर MnO2 is reduced to Mn, Al is oxidized to Al2O3. Same way zinc oxide is reduced to zinc, carbon is oxidized to carbon monoxide. Fe2O3 is reduced to Fe, CO is oxidized to CO2. Here there is one oxygen, here there are two oxygen, so it is oxidation. Same way Fe2O3 is reduced to Fe, Al is oxidized to Al2O3. Now here zinc is oxidized to zinc sulfate, copper sulfate is reduced to copper. Now here also you can take the same way. ऑक्सीजन यहाँ से सल्फेट की फॉर्म में पूरा हट गया, कॉपर बन गया तो रिडक्शन है. जिंक टू जिंक सल्फेट SO4 O ऐड हुआ तो ऑक्सीडेशन. नाउ व्हाट इज द बेसिक थिंग दैट यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड? When oxidation takes place, the substance which is undergoing oxidation, what is it? It is a reducing agent. And the substance which is undergoing reduction, what is it? It is an oxidizing agent. Right? Now in the same example you see, PbO is reduced to Pb. The one which is reduced is an oxidizing agent. Carbon is oxidized to carbon monoxide. So carbon is a reducing agent. उसका process oxidation है, substance reducing agent है. ये process reduction है, substance oxidizing agent है. ठीक है? Process and the name that you give, they are just opposite to each other. Oxidation है तो reducing agent है, reduction है तो oxidizing agent है. ठीक है? So this is how you can see for all the reactions. Now H2S to S, इसमें क्या हुआ? हाइड्रोजन रिमूव हो गया, ऑक्सीजन ऐड हुआ तब भी ऑक्सीडेशन है, हाइड्रोजन रिमूव हुआ तब भी ऑक्सीडेशन है. तो H2S is oxidized to sulfur. That means H2S is the reducing agent. Br2 में हाइड्रोजन ऐड हुआ, gain of hydrogen is reduction. So Br2 is reduced to HBr. So Br2 is an oxidizing agent. So this is how you have to understand this. Okay. So I have given you all examples.